back to my channel, and welcome if you are new here. I'm Andrea.M. and welcome to the Oz Files, The Truth Is Out Back Season 2. And today we are delving into another almost well-kept secret in the dark history of Australia. The Peat Island Lunatic Asylum. And this video was requested by my dearest friends, Bianca and Derry Moroney. And Derry has a photography channel here on YouTube, so please go check it out, and I will link in the description box below. And before we go down another dark hallway, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, because YouTube notices all of that. And it's subscribers like your good selves that really help creators like me further our careers here on YouTube. So if you could do that for me, it would be greatly appreciated. And also, we'd just like to take the opportunity to wish all of my subscribers and my new subscribers and people watching a very happy Easter weekend. I have little Eloise here. She is my little Easter bunny that I decided to adopt and bring home. She's not haunted or anything. She's just here for the good time for Easter weekend. So she's going to be helping me with the video today. And if you're wondering where Charlie and Oogie have been, they have been very diligently preparing for our Samhain, which here in Australia is actually April. It's April 29th. And that's like our version of Halloween, if you happen to be of the Wicca persuasion as I am. And I'm thinking of a very special video for Samhain Eve. But if you want to see what I'm going to do for our Samhain here in the Southern Hemisphere, you're going to have to keep on watching. But it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little bit spooky, and that's all I'm going to say. So if you want to know what I'm going to do, you're going to have to keep watching. So that's happy Easter from all of us to all of you. Have a very safe and happy holiday, and let's just get into today's video. So Peat Island is a small island of approximately 8 hectares in the Hawkesbury River just north of Sydney, New South Wales. It forms part of the suburb called Moroney and is located just upstream from the Sydney-Newcastle Freeway Bridge. Other islands in the Hawkesbury River include Dangar Island, Spectacle Island, Milson Island, Long Island and Lion Island. Peat Island was originally known as Rabbit Island, presumably due to the fact that rabbits were being kept there as reported in 1841. That to the east is termed Goat Island, having many of those animals grazing thereon. The other Rabbit Island, which is numerously stocked as a rabbit warren. It was only renamed to Peat Island in 1936 due to its proximity of Peat's Ferry, which at the time was operating between Mooney and Kangaroo Point on the Hawkesbury. George Peat was an early settler and boat builder who established the first ferry across the Hawkesbury in this vicinity in 1844. During the 1890s, the New South Wales government decided to establish an asylum for inebriates or alcoholics where they could be treated in isolation from the general prison and hospital population. The relevant legislation was passed in 1900, and Dr. J.M. Creed, a member of the New South Wales Legislative Council from 1885 to 1930, selected Peat and nearby Milson Island as the site for female and male asylums respectively. As always, when we start looking deeper into the history of all things established within colonial times, not all was as calm and neatly packaged away as it seemed on the surface. With the Peat Island Lunatic Asylum also becoming known as Australia's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And if you don't know what I'm referring to when I say One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it is a novel and it is also a movie. I used to know when the movie was made. I think it was late 60s, early 70s. And funnily enough, it was one of my dad's favourite pictures because he loved Jack Nicholson and he loved Will Sampson, both who star in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But the Cuckoo's Nest was an asylum, and this was actually set in the US, where the inmates, or the patients as they really should be referred to, were not treated very nicely, and that is why Peat Island got a similar reputation to the Cuckoo's Nest. So if you've never read the book or seen the movie, it is a confronting piece of literature and film, but it is also a classic, So I do encourage you to go watch it if you haven't seen it already, if you can stomach that kind of thing. I actually haven't seen it for many, many years. I just remember Dad watching it a lot when I was a kid. And I don't think I've actually seen the whole movie all the way through, but what I saw I think was enough for me. So watch it at your own peril, but it is a classic film. Or you can read the novel, which may be a little bit less confronting. Anyway, back to the Peat Island Insane Asylum. If the walls of the now abandoned Lunatic Asylum on Peat Island could talk, they would tell of the horrors experienced by patients, including children, on a site plagued by death and despair. The 8-hectare island on the Hawkesbury River was established as an asylum for inebriates in 1911 before it was reopened as a psychiatric hospital just 50 kilometres north of Sydney. By many accounts, Peat Island was a grim place to live indeed. Both media and government departments reported torture, multiple drownings, and unexplained deaths of men and little boys. According to reports, Ward 4 was where the most brutal treatments took place. The first major incident recorded was in 1924 when William Finkst admitted to killing another inmate, Harold Beasley, by hitting him with a stick, tying him up with a bag over his head before dropping him into the water that surrounds the island, of course, where he would eventually drown. The mysterious deaths of child patients repeatedly made headlines over the years of the facility's operation. Amongst them was the case of Robert Bruce Walker, who was only 8 years old and was found floating off the island after he had been put in the pen, a caged compartment as punishment in 1940. The hospital manager, William James McCoy, told an inquest into the boy's death that these patients were up to all sorts of tricks. This was an 8-year-old little boy, and in an unfamiliar place. God only knows why he was sent there in the first place, but this is an 8-year-old little boy, so I'm not sure that an 8-year-old little boy in a strange place, which would obviously be quite frightening for him. I can't actually really imagine what kind of tricks an 8-year-old little child would be up to in a place like that. So it makes me wonder, was he actually murdered by one of the guards? Food for thought. In May 1950, 11-year-old Robert Blackwood was found asphyxiated in a linen bin made of iron after only 5 months at the institution. Again, a hospital attendant said Robert had been mischievous and playful and had died playing hide and seek among a pile of soiled linen. And to me, that's got to be one heck of a pile of soiled linen for a child to asphyxiate and die there. I would say he was killed either by one of the guards or the attendants or maybe another inmate, and his body was hidden in the laundry. That's what I'm leaning towards, because these are children. Yeah, he might have been hiding, but I'm finding it hard to believe that an 11-year-old child, an 11-year-old is a lot bigger than an 8-year-old, they would know if they were becoming uncomfortable and they would jump out. But I guess maybe he fell asleep in there and a big pile of laundry came in and he couldn't get out. Who knows? We'll never know the truth about these things, but that's just the places that my mind goes to when I'm researching and having a look at these sort of cases. My mind goes to a lot of different scenarios, particularly when, unfortunately, there are child deaths involved. One journalist who visited the island in 1956 described it as a hospital of forgotten children. Many other unexplained deaths took place on the island. At least 300 patients who died at the institution were buried in unmarked graves at nearby Brooklyn Cemetery. Reports of sexual and physical abuse, torture, and lack of thorough investigations also spilt out from under the closed doors of the site. One of the most shocking incidents made headlines across the country in 1983, and 1983 isn't very long ago. A mentally challenged youth's 10 fingernails were torn out while under temporary care in a psychiatric institution. And this was reported by the Daily Telegraph in 1983. In a 39-page report, the New South Wales Deputy Ombudsman Darryl Gunter criticised the Health Department for not investigating the matter adequately. Mr Gunter's report stems from complaints by the youth's parents. They left their 17-year-old son at the Peat Island Hospital on the Hawkesbury River on January 10, 1981. When they collected him on January 28, he was without all of his fingernails. The parents rejected reports from the doctors that a 12-year-old patient was responsible. And we're getting back to where they are blaming the children. It's the child's fault he drowned. It's this child's fault that he suffocated to death in the laundry pile. And now it was a 12-year-old who had the strength to rip out an almost grown man's fingernails. And that's hard to do. I mean, you have to... I've seen this on horror movies, okay, so don't come for me wondering why I know how to rip somebody's fingernails out. But the thing is, like, fingernails are they're strong, they're embedded, and they go down, like, further than you think. Like, your actual nail starts down here somewhere. So that takes an awful lot of force to actually rip somebody's fingernails out. And I can't imagine a 17 or 18-year-old just sitting there, la, 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 while a kid just sits there happily pulling their fingernails out. That would have to be extraordinarily painful, and to me, that would call for some kind of restraint. So I'm really doubting this story as well, that it was actually a 12-year-old patient that sat there and just happily pulled this older boy's fingernails out. No, I'm not buying it. So Dr. Ted Freeman, who worked at the mental institution for 1 year in 1981, described Ward 4 as a prison. In January 1981, I met with the medical superintendent of Peat Island and walked around the wards with him, Dr. Freeman wrote in his book Battle for the Injured Brain, co-authored by Dr. Peter Collar. There were approximately 160 patients, or residents as they were called, and some had been inmates on Peat Island for almost 50 years. The staff were caring, but it was a custodial institution. Many of the wards had an open door policy. One ward did not, and it was Ward 4, of course. The doctor would also go on to write that the doors were heavily padlocked and the windows had heavy wire mesh over them. It was indeed a prison. The smell of human urine, feces and vomit hit you the moment that you entered. The patients were shouting, screaming, yelling, banging their heads, jostling each other, walking or dragging themselves from one place to another, apparently without any purpose. He'd go on to say that many had adopted the typical institutional constant rocking movement backwards and forwards, whether standing, sitting or lying on the seats or on the floor. Some were openly aggressive. And he would also say that this place was one flew over the cuckoo's nest in reality. Dr. Freeman also said that he did see the staff were caring and he never saw any of them abuse any of the patients. But why would he? If you have this distinguished doctor who's a higher power than you, of course you're not going to play up in front of him. You're going to put on your best face. The doctor would also say, I researched the medical records of each patient in Ward 4. 1/3 of the admissions were post-encephalitis, often from measles. 1/3 were admitted because of cerebral palsy. No information was recorded about the other inmates. I noted many records on incidental things such as a skin rash or ingrowing toenails or hemorrhoids, but only minor entries detailing brain injury or the mental state or behaviour of the inmates. The data was extremely unbalanced. The clinical notes indicated no therapy had been given even on a trial basis in Ward 4. The residents in this ward were there forever. And he would go on to say sadly that for these poor souls, for them death was the only release. The psychiatric hospital later became a residential care centre for people with intellectual disabilities who were reportedly kindly cared for following the brutal regime before the last patient left in just 2010. So today, the original Edwardian period buildings, including the hospital, patient housing, a large water tower that had water pumped across from the mainland, and a car park sitting rusting and overgrown, surrounded by water and nestled in the shadows of the tree-covered hills. So all the buildings, the water tower, everything is still there on Peat Island. So the only way to reach the island is by boat or over a causeway, but access is forbidden to the general public at this time. And the rabbits have again inhabited the island, once known, as we explored before, Rabbit Island in 1841, before construction of the Peat Island facility started. So I'm not sure how far along they are with this. I couldn't really find any update at the time of the articles that I did find in my research. The state government has announced plans to build a multi-million-dollar island resort and marina, including 450 new homes and a marina on the site with planning department approval. But not even the demolition of the site is likely to ever fully erase the horrors that took place at the Peat Island Institution. And honestly, I hope that this has actually fallen through. If I can find any more information or an update on Peat Island, I will let you guys know. But for my money, I would be leaving the island alone. I'd be leaving it to the rabbits. I would actually love to go to Peat Island for a paranormal investigation of the old buildings. I think it would be super scary. Also, I think it would be quite fascinating. But that's going to be something I'm not sure if we're ever going to be able to do. But if they ever do open Peat Island up to that kind of thing and they don't demolish all the buildings that were there, I think it'd be a really interesting paranormal investigation. So that may be something for a future video with my team from Clarence Valley Paranormal. If you want to see that happen though, you're going to have to get those likes up there. If you can get this video to 2,000 likes, we will find out if we can go to Peat Island for an investigation. But you guys are going to have to help us get there. We can't do it without you. So, what do you guys think? Have you ever heard of Peat Island? Do you know any stories about it? And this is yet another dark secret of hidden Australia. I never knew it existed, so thanks very much to Bianca and Derry for making me aware of it. And this is why we make these videos like this, so these dark times don't become forgotten, or heaven forbid repeated at some stage. So feel free to add your thoughts and opinions on Peat Island in the comments section. As always, please be respectful in doing so towards me and each other. And that is where we leave Peat Island and all of its ghosts. I actually really would love to do an investigation of Peat Island. So remember, get this video to 2,000 likes and we will see if we can make that happen. And before I finish up, just want to wish you all a very happy Easter once again from all of us here, from Bianca and myself, from Charlie and Oogie, and from Mr. Louie, who refused to be on camera today. Just everybody have a really wonderful weekend. Be safe and eat some chocolate for me, because I'm still not allowed to have chocolate with my current condition with histamine intolerance. So please, if everybody could eat an extra chocolate egg for me, I would be totally grateful for that. So there, you are have encouragement to eat as much chocolate as you can this weekend, but please don't make yourself sick. Anyway, so next weekend, all systems are go finally for our first paranormal investigation of the year. I'm so excited. So please stay tuned for that, as well as more Missing Down Under, Real Crime Down Under, Unsolved Down Under, and of course more of the Oz Files. As always, guys, thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you all again in my next video. Bye. Stay safe.